Hey guys, well thanks for tuning in to our Soulfire Sunday. I'm your host Shawn Evans, and we've got Mr. Paulie O'Byrne with us this evening.
You betcha.
And Scott obviously can't be here, but he's sharing it on his pages. Paulie's sharing it on 115. Yeah. This week our topic is self-talk, the key to healthy self-esteem. So before we get going, what did you think of this week's audio?
I loved it. I thought it was like super informative about like the basic of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like trying to change those thoughts, those negative thoughts. And I mean, there's a few things that surprised me. One of the things was that, where was it that I have it written down here that we have like, oh, that's week 2. Here it is. 300 negative thoughts a day.
Yeah.
On
which
average.
is every, so that's every 2.5 minutes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so people with anxiety and depression, or just negative thinkers in general, the average person thinks 300 negative thoughts a day. So for people that actually are overthinkers and overanalyzers, if that's an average, it's probably double or triple that. So if you have a negative thought every 2.5 minutes and you're an average person, someone with anxiety disorder, depression, anxiety of any kind really, could be thinking a negative thought every minute of their lives. Right.
And what I found from this is that here's a solution that you don't have to.
Right.
Like, how cool is that we've found a solution? I'm a solutions guy, right? So
sure, yeah.
If I'm having 300 negative thoughts a day, and I'm not a perfectionist, so I would maybe want to get that down to 200 a day.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or 150, cut that in half.
And just work at it,
work at it.
Sure.
I think the biggest thing that I found, especially with this week, was that it's a daily practice, and sometimes our days suck, and we have terrible days, right?
And you just want to indulge in that sometimes.
And
sometimes you just want to be shitty, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if the Queen of England came up to you and said, be happy, right? Or your hero said, be happy. If you want to have a negative mindset, you're going to have a negative mindset.
You are definitely going to put yourself in that space, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this week, for those of you that are just tuning in and are new or will be watching this is evergreen, so usually it gets up to at least a couple thousand people that watch. So we're following a program for cognitive behavioral therapy, which is attacking anxiety, stress, and depression. And we're on the 3rd week. It's our 4th episode, though. We did an introductory episode. And we are following Lucinda Bassett from the Midwest Center. It's her program. We're just kind of doing it and trying to bring this awareness to the world because anxiety seems to be on the rise big time. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about self-talk. Self-talk is one of the most important topics for recovery from both anxiety and depression. Unfortunately for a lot of people, this is one of the most difficult concepts to grasp and understand, but in the end, it's really simple. It's just something that you have to work at. It takes practice and patience. It's one of the most difficult concepts. We're thinkers. We think all the time, and we often think very, very negatively. And a lot of people, I know that I myself didn't want to admit I was a negative thinker.
Yeah.
I felt like I kind of was ashamed that I was a negative thinker. I don't want to be a negative thinker. Just like you don't want to admit that you have low self-esteem.
Yeah.
No one wants to admit that too. Everybody wants to come off like they have confidence.
Right. I think for me, I knew I was a negative thinker. And I just didn't think that it was possible to become a positive thinker.
You just thought that's the way you were.
Right. I thought, well, these are the cards that I was dealt, and so I have to be a negative thinker. I was stuck in that pity party, and I'm the only one that kept me in that pity party, really. Because I'm the one that got out of that pity party, but I just didn't think that it was possible to be a positive thinker.
Right.
Because I'd been dealt a shitty hand, and that if this is the way it is, then this is the way it is. And I think that's what really kept me sick for so long, was believing my own bullshit. Yeah. That I'm always going to be a negative thinker. And I mean, before this program, I've learned that I can be a positive thinker for sure. But this has definitely helped. And
good. And we're only on week 3, man. Yeah. So this is a really cool week because you kind of start to take a look at what's going on inside, right? And how the mind and the body are connected, and that you can really make yourself feel anything that you want to make yourself feel just by using your thoughts.
Yeah, the brain's powerful.
It's very powerful. I mean, when you think about the placebo effect, and I mean, medicine, like you think about medication, you think about all this stuff, well, they give people sugar pills and in a controlled environment, right? They'll give you a sugar pill. If they're testing a medication, they'll give some people, half the test group, the medication, half of them a placebo. Right. And some of the people still respond extremely well just by believing they're on the medication, right? Right. So that shows how powerful the mind is.
Yeah.
So if you don't think you're a negative thinker, let's explain what that is. Are you someone that catastrophizes? Do you overanalyze? Do you worry a lot? Do you beat yourself up and feel like nothing is working in your life? And the thing is, this isn't reality. Right. This is a big part of the problem, actually. Most of our negative thoughts aren't even true.
That's what I got written here, and like I think that was like finally a piece of like, oh, sweet.
Well, how many times have you like gone over some event in your mind over and over again and you've driven yourself almost bonkers for like a day or two?
Yeah.
This is called anticipatory anxiety, by the way. But you're constantly thinking about the worst case scenario. And I don't know if that's a past, like, you're just trying to kind of condition yourself so that you're not disappointed if it is a bad outcome. Yeah. But, like, 99% of the time, half the shit that you're thinking about doesn't even happen.
Doesn't happen, yeah. Or I've been in situations where
unless you create it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I've been in situations where I've overthought the worst, the absolute worst. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of put a bad vibe out to the universe, right? Like, I'm a big believer in what you put out, you get back. And so I constantly was putting out bad vibes, thinking the worst is going to happen. And maybe that actual thing that I was thinking didn't happen, but something bad is going to happen, right?
Right. Because do you think you attracted that
I think I attracted that.
Sure.
I think if we emit positive kind of neurotransmitters, we're going to receive that as well.
Sure.
Which I didn't think I'd ever be saying the word neurotransmitter.
That's a good word.
But it's a good word.
It's a good word, sure. Okay, so it's not reality. It's a big part of the problem. Most of our negative thoughts aren't even true. The positive thoughts and the comforting thoughts, the empowering thoughts, those are the ones that are true.
Yeah.
Self-esteem is extremely important when you're recovering from anxiety and depression. And at the base of all negative self-esteem is negative thinking.
Right.
So isn't that interesting that you've kind of conditioned yourself to have low self-esteem by the negative thoughts that you've given yourself?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously it can come from externally as well. People can call you names and bully you, and that's not going to help your self-esteem. But it's when you start to believe that and you start treating yourself the way that the bullies treat you in your mind, obviously that's negative thinking, and that's going to give you low self-esteem.
I think like what I can identify with that is like when I was homeless, right? And I thought, this is all I deserve. Like I'm okay living in my car because this is all I deserve, and I didn't think I deserved anything else, right? So I was stuck in that negative thinking in my brain saying, this is all I deserve is to live in my car. This is all I deserve is to have no teeth. This is all I deserve to not eat. And I realized that I deserve recovery.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That took a long time to believe that I was actually deserving of some sort of love in a recovery community. And I think once that switch happened, that I knew that I was deserving of it, then the work started.
What was that switch like before we go any further? Was that a gradual switch, or did something so was that from people telling you that you deserved it through recovery, or did you actually start telling yourself you believed it?
I think people started showing me that, right? And they like, because I started speaking so early, like I started speaking 4 days into my recovery,
right?
And it just kind of taken off from there. So people said, hey, Paulie, like, you have a great story, you have a great message, and I didn't believe that for the longest time, right? So maybe after like 8,000 people telling me, you have a great message, Paulie, I was finally like, okay, like, just to shut you up, I believe you, you know what I mean? And then I started to believe it, and I started to get more speaking engagements, and I started to have a little bit of confidence in my message.
Yep.
And now, I mean, I got like 6 speaking engagements booked for the next like 3 weeks.
Amazing.
And that's just from, I think, being positive about the message that I have and not giving up. Like, I'm resilient when it comes to that stuff. So when that switch happened, I think the resilience said, okay, let's go, let's roll with this.
Right.
And it just took a long time for me to actually believe it, but that switch it was gradual for sure.
It was gradual. Yeah. So it wasn't, so I think the message that I want from you is that this is going to take a little bit of time. You will have to be patient. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't sort of, as much as I love Tony Robbins, and he says you can change your life sort of at the snap of a finger, you're still going to have to implement what he teaches you on a daily basis until you start to develop a good habit. And we'll get into that right now. The interesting thing about negative thinking is that it's a bad habit. Mm-hmm. So that I thought was really cool. And you can relate to this because it's an addictive behavior.
100% it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So you and I are both sober, so we know what it's like to be addicted and crave something. And even the way that we think can be addicting.
Oh, yeah. I think that it's not. I think addiction, like a big misconception, or maybe we're turning the corner here on like addiction, right? It's not just drugs and alcohol.
No,
right? It's eating, it's sex, it's gambling, it's codependency.
Yeah,
right?
everybody can get addicted to something, right?
Get addicted to anything if it releases those,
right?
Like,
cell phones,
social
media,
yeah.
The thing is, though, is that our body doesn't know the difference between getting addicted to something bad or getting addicted to something good.
Right.
So if you're going to be addicted to something, you might as well be addicted to the positive things, which is getting rid of the negative thinking bad habit and starting to implement positive thinking. Or positive thinking is kind of a cliche thing to say, and be positive. Much easier said than done. This is more empowerment thinking.
That's what I've written down here.
Yeah,
I love that.
Empowerment
thinking, because you're empowering yourself, and that in turn helps your self-esteem, and that helps your self-confidence. And I think people that have higher self-esteem and higher self-confidence could be more successful. And it doesn't matter where their past came from. If they put this empowerment, or they implement this empowerment thinking into their lives, then their lives can change gradually over time for the better.
Right, 100%. And so we kind of, at this stage, if you're looking in and you're thinking, if you can relate to any of this, and you're saying, geez, maybe I am a negative thinker, we kind of, and don't let this scare you, because I know for us it doesn't scare us, but you need to view yourself almost like an addict for drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
And just, you have to break that chain. So we need to be determined to break this bad habit daily, hourly, weekly, and we need to use the empowerment thinking to break free from this. So learning to replace negative thoughts with more realistic, truthful thoughts that make us feel good, make us feel less afraid, make us feel more empowered, make us stronger, make us feel prettier, make us feel more confident, make us feel more loved and loving. Those are the kind of thoughts we want to put in our mind. So self-talk is a skill that needs to be learned over time, as we said, with a lot of practice and patience. And this is where you said the average person about 300 negative thoughts a day, and we're usually worse. So an example of a negative thinking, and I felt this.
Oh yeah.
You let me know if you felt this. Getting up in the morning, you say to yourself, I don't feel good. Then you say to yourself, I've got a headache. Then you say, oh, I feel fat today. Oh, I don't want to go to work. It's raining out. That's already 5 negative thoughts.
Right away.
In a span of like a minute.
Yeah.
Right? All of those are different negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So how long do you think that's going to take to get up to 300? Probably not very long.
No time.
Yeah.
No time.
So most people with anxiety and depression talk to themselves in their mind daily, hourly, very, very negatively. It's constant.
Right.
Have you ever had negative constant thinking?
Oh yeah.
Where you just can't get every thought throughout the day has been negative. Do you think you've ever had that?
I think
or close to it?
Even for the example of going through a breakup.
Mm-hmm.
People will say, whether you break up that day or you talk to your friends or your support system the day after, she wasn't the one. Or,
yeah, breakups are tough for negative thoughts.
And you're just like, I don't care what you say. I feel sad right now, or I feel angry, I feel hurt. And I think the best thing that I can say to that is hurt people, right? And so when you're going through a breakup, let's say, you just kind of have to take maybe a few days, maybe a week, maybe a few weeks to grieve that, right?
Sure.
And I think a relationship is tough. I think relationships are tough.
Relationships are, and we're getting into with relationships, that's also another addiction.
Yeah.
Because there's oxytocin, right, that is released when you get the love drug, when you sort of feel those feelings. And again, when you're in a relationship, we're kind of getting off topic here, but you're not actually in love with that person. You're in love with the way that person makes you feel.
Right.
So you're really addicted to what you can do for yourself. This is kind of a way to do that. But if you are going through a breakup right now, it is tough. And the same thing, you're addicted to that person, so you need to break that habit. It usually takes at least 21 days to form a new habit. I usually just say a month. Keep it 30 days. Yeah. So basically, if you just got through a breakup, don't contact that person for 30 days. Let yourself ease off of that the biological drug that's running through your veins.
Because it will be intense.
Absolutely.
There's nothing, for example, when I went through a breakup,